your what we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is Talib Kweli. I'm your host. This is the People's Party. Welcome to my wonderful, beautiful, talented co-host, Jasmin Leigh.
Hello.
That's right. Jasmin rolled with a winning team today.
I did.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
She gets it. Today is a very special episode because we have a comedian.
Oh, yes, I'm excited.
You like the comedians?
I do.
This comedian today is someone who I admire for their voice and their courage. She is a writer, a producer, a TV host. You might know her from her Netflix comedy series, her HBO stand-up special. She started out on Late Night with Seth Meyers. She worked on The Daily Show with Trevor, and you definitely know her from her legendary performance at the 2018 White House Correspondents Dinner. She's a fucking badass. People give it up for Michelle Wolf.
How
you doing?
Good, how are you?
Let's get into it. Let's get the wolf stuff out. Michelle of the Wolves.
I am of the Wolves.
You are of the Wolf.
It's a great last name.
I
got really lucky.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like ferocious and fierce.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good.
Okay.
Good to be here. Sorry, I'm out of it.
Why?
Well, I've been editing a special, and there's nothing worse than watching yourself for 12 hours straight. It's really terrible. I can tell you everything that's wrong with my body right now.
Oh, no.
I would love to do that, whether it's me or you.
No, it's awful. It's really awful. My one eye closes more than my other. I think my right hand is too big. These are all things you notice.
Everyone has a lazy eye. Some people have to drink a little bit before it's shown. But.
Yeah, well, mine is all over the place.
So you're focused on your flaws from watching yourself.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I've ever looked at myself and said anything positive.
What about you, Jan?
I mean, I tend to find a little bit of positive things to say about me. Some might say I find too many positive things to say about me, but that someone is not me.
Okay. You talk a lot about, or joke a lot about your voice.
Yeah.
When did you notice that your voice was different than everyone else's?
I started doing the announcements in 7th grade when I was in middle school. I do the morning announcements, and then that's when I noticed that it was like
on the loudspeaker.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
man, that's perfect.
Yeah, and then people were like, I had a co-host, and every co-host I had, they had like a human voice, and then I'd be like, "Good morning, it's Thursday," and everyone would be like, "No, that's a little aggressive."
I did the morning announcements too, and people also talked about my voice, but for the opposite reason of yours, so it's super deep and raspy like a man's.
Yeah, well, that's what people think is like cool and sexy. I never get
smoker's voice.
Yeah. When I have a cold,
you sound
it's really
great.
Yeah.
I'm on the last Tribe Called Quest album, and I did the verse, and it was cool. And Q-Tip was an excellent vocal producer. But then he was like, "Something missing. I need you to come in and do the vocals again." And I was in Florida, and I was in Florida trying to get over a cold. I had a show, and I stayed extra days to get the sun in me, some vitamin D. I'm like, "I have a cold." He's like, "Perfect. Come today. Come right now." You having a cold is exactly what I want you to sound like on this record.
Wow.
And I recorded with a cold.
That's perfect. That's when I'm the best. The only other time I did Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and she she has like a whisper voice.
Yeah, the NPR voice.
Yeah, the whole time I was just like, yeah, and then I was also like, I felt like I had to match her. I didn't want to like break.
Right, it was like a whisper off.
Yeah.
I don't know how to whisper.
Now, you grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania?
That's correct.
When I was a child, a wee lad in my salad days, going to Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania was a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my goodness, like it's not just chocolate, but it's an amusement park.
Oh.
Yeah, man. So what was that like? Were y'all just over it?
Yeah, well, it was really fun because the park used to close. It closed at 10, but at 9:30 you could go in for free. So we used to all
Tricks
go.
of the trade.
For a half hour?
Yeah, so we would go in at 9:30. There was like this spot we knew to park to like, we'd run in the park, we'd ride a roller coaster for like, until they were like, you guys got to get off.
Right.
And then we'd leave. So it was just fun.
Wow.
But I also worked at a Subway sandwich place that was in the park, and that wasn't as fun.
Subway sandwich has a distinct smell.
Yeah.
I hear that's from the bread.
It's from the bread. And also, the subway that was by the water portion of the park. So there was like the bread smell plus the chlorine smell.
Oh,
And
This
then
is like
there's all
the
these-
the like true Hollywood stories of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Subway
Yeah.
should be half off with all of the smelling and the
it's gross.
scandals, and
Yeah.
they
Well,
should
you
just
know,
be giving it away at this point.
the fact that they didn't go under after that Jared
Oh, yeah.
scandal
Yeah.
is a testament to their sandwiches.
They can survive like roaches.
You can, yeah. You survive a pedophile scandal.
Right.
You're
like they made Jared their guy too. Like he was the subway guy.
yeah, and you
go-to.
know, after he lost weight, he had more kids after. You know,
Right.
like he was able to pedophile more.
Right.
He was able to move faster.
That's
Yeah.
terrible. That's our sponsor, by the way.
Yeah, well,
And you know what? They knew.
the sandwiches aren't bad.
Wait, is it really our sponsor?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a sponsor.
I was gonna say,
It's the
where's our
People's
free
Party,
sandwiches?
Jasmin.
All right.
We're sponsored by the love of the people.
And you know what? Also at that Subway, they a lot of articles said that they knew about it. That people were already complaining about Jared, and they were like saying like, oh, he shouldn't be going to schools and to speak and stuff, and they still was letting him speak. So I don't know how they got over that.
You know, we talk about comedy and just everything being a lot more PC.
Yeah.
And sometimes comedians and actors and people in this generation are getting penalized for things back in the days because we're a lot more aware
Right.
of things. And sometimes that's not good. But I like the fact that we're a lot more aware of how bad pedophiles are.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to be more
Yeah.
on top of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At any
agree.
time, if you were a Chester, you should be clinked up. And it
Right, because
because
I look at entertainment and stuff from back in the days, and it was like our society is just recently, maybe in the last 10, 15 years, decided that pedophilia is a bad thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's like how good do you have to be at something to get away with pedophilia?
Ooh.
You know, like
Yeah.
Jerry Sandusky must have been
Right.
great.
It's the power of the jam. It's like
Yeah.
Gerard Carmichael has a bit where he talks about talent outweighs morality.
Yeah, all the time. I have this theory that you only have so much good, and if it's all towards one thing, then you're going to be terrible in the rest of your life.
Right.
If you're really excellent at one thing, you're probably going to be terrible at the rest. Like Steve Jobs, excellent at tech and selling tech. Bad dad, like there's
God doesn't give you too much.
Yeah.
He wants to humble you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you were at Bear Stearns and J.P. Morgan in the time that led up to the financial crisis, and now you are famously politically progressive comedian. How do you feel about Wall Street right now? What kind of advice would you have for people working in that type of job?
Wolf on Wall Street. Sorry. I had to do it.
A friend of mine's trying to get that nickname to stick for 3 years.
Trying to make fetch happen over there.
I'm sorry.
That was a very bleak time in my life.
Wow.
It's the craziest part about working at Bear Stearns, because I was there when it collapsed. I was there the day Bear Stearns collapsed. I was there after the weekend when there was a $2 bill taped on the doorway, and you just after JP Morgan bought them, and you just over the course of several months saw people get fired every week, and you saw people that had worked they had spent their whole careers invested in this company, in Bear Stearns. They worked from their bottom up. They were invested in the stock, and they lost almost everything. Not to mention all the people that also did, but it was really bleak to see how little they cared. And even to this day, I don't invest in the market at all. I don't trust it at all.
From your experience.
Yeah, and I know people are always no, it's long term. Long terms it evens out. But if you're retirement age when something like that happens, you're screwed. Anyone that was wanting to retire around 2007, 2008, they would either have to retire with nothing if they were heavily invested, or they could work for 10 more years until it bounced back. So I think banks are terrible. There are good people that work there. I genuinely had good bosses who were invested. They love the market, but in general, the places are. If you're looking at things that are wrong with America, you could name
Banks.
Clearly a lot, but the banks are number one.
That's why I keep my money underneath my mattress.
Don't say that.
I'm just kidding. I don't have any money in my house. What are you talking about?
So how did you get from that to comedy?
Well, the first couple months working at the bank, I did like it. Like there was something about wearing a suit and like being around all these powerful people that I was like, yeah, maybe I could do this, you know? And then that lasted for a couple months. And then I was like, no, everyone here is very mean and this place is not good. And it's making me mean and angry. And my friends came to, it's toxic all over. But my friends came to visit me. And I should also say, I did very well at the bank. Like it wasn't like people
were good at your job.
I was good at my job. I kept moving up. And I still was like, this is a bad environment. Like what you have to do to keep moving up doesn't feel good. My first day at the job, I started out as an assistant to the CFO of the private bank. And the first day, he hadn't had an assistant for a while. So the woman who was sitting in front of me, who was assistant to the CEO, had been working with him. And I walk into the office. He holds up this like tan-colored moleskin notebook. And he was like, this is the color I like my coffee. Wow. And he goes, go get that.
Oh.
And then, so I went to the coffee shop. I tried to match it.
80s movie villain type shit.
I tried to match it as close as I could. And then I came back and I brought it to him and he opened it up and he goes, Amy, she does it better than you.
Oh, shit.
And so then immediately she hated me.
It's like Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, that was like this to every like
Miranda.
Wall Street movie you've ever seen of a powerful boss.
Yes.
Like that's all of it.
Yeah, it was. And that was like, that's my first day. Like, that's like, okay, this is the environment. I got to like compete. I got to, which I am very competitive.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like for a little bit, it was fun to wear like suits and be in an office and feel like that you have like a little bit of power. And I could see how people could really get locked into that. But my friends came to visit me a couple months after I started working there, and we went to see a taping of SNL, and I'd always been such a huge fan. And after that, I was just like, well, how did these people start working here? So I Googled all of them, and they almost all started in improv. So then I just signed up for an improv class.
How important do you think the improv class is? Because I'm a huge fan of SNL, right? And I'm a huge fan of comedians that come out of Upright Citizen Brigade and Second City and stuff. And when I go back and look at the origin stories of my favorite comedians, it's often there.
Yeah.
How essential do you feel like that is to a comedian's career?
I mean, I think improv is it's such a valuable skill to have.
In life.
In life, and like in stand-up, it helps so much just to be able to be on stage, because it helps me write on stage. That if that, then what else skill. It helps you to listen. It helps you to react. Like all that stuff. They're all good life skills. They're all good comedy skills.
I did experimental theater in college, which is essentially, it's theater improv. It's not comedy improv, but it's a lot of the same skills. And I quit in the first year and started my career in rapping, but because that's where my heart was. But I definitely use a lot of the skills that I learned in that first year. Yeah. From experimental theater.
That's exactly. I eventually switched from improv to stand-up, and all the stuff I learned in improv, great. Right. I use it every day.
Now, you seem very, extremely hyper-disciplined just from knowing you, right? And you know, having to have that type of job at Bear Stearns or something like that and be good at it, you have to be disciplined. Having to go from improv to stand-up as quickly as you did and be successful at it, you have to be disciplined. And you're also a runner. And you also study human movement. And can you tell us more about that side of your athletic side? Because I feel like that adds to your competitive side.
Oh, yeah. Let's
get into that.
Let's talk about competitive. Well, growing up, I was always super into sports. I did every sport for at least a little bit, but then I really fell in love with running and track. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I was like, well, I knew I couldn't be a professional athlete. I wasn't, I'm not that egotistical. But I was like, well, I want to work with athletes though. So I found a major kinesiology, which is the study of how the body moves, which is I went to school for that, and because I thought I could be one of those people that like remember those old Gatorade commercials where you saw people like running on treadmills hooked up to all the equipment. I was like, I want to be that person.
Sweat.
Yeah, I want to be the guy studying that athlete.
Right.
So that's what kinesiologists end up doing. They end up
Gatorade commercials.
Yeah, they end up Gatorade commercials. Right. They go right from college to SAG, and then they. But yeah, so I started studying that. I loved it. I loved anatomy. I loved biomechanics. I loved exercise physiology. I worked in this cardiovascular physiology lab.
So these are like several difficult fields that you're finding huge success in.
Here's the thing. I hate disappointing people.
You must hate it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I'm like I always like to do really well at stuff. And
Are you a Libra?
No, I'm the day it changes from
You're a Virgo.
Gemini to Cancer.
Oh, Gemini?
The day it changes. Really? I'm a middle person.
Oh.
Although I said that to Madonna once.
Wanted to
Sorry,
claim
that's a
you.
real big name drop.
Me and M was hanging out.
But she goes,
Right.
she asked me what my sign was, and I said that to her, and she goes, no, not the sign on the Gregorian calendar. And I was like,
She stunned it on you.
all right.
Right.
I was just going by the calendar that's on my phone.
Jasmin apparently wants to have an astrology segment of this show.
I know. I'm always asking.
Jasmin's
people's signs,
astrology corner.
but I really wanted to claim you because Libras, we're good at a lot of things, and people are like, "Oh, how are you good at so many things?" But it's just like something that we do. So I was just hoping that you were one of us. But
I don't think I'm good at a lot of things. I think I'm good at a couple things, and then I just push those forward.
So you feel like you're not wanting to disappoint people is that drive is so great that it makes you great at things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that because I work with a lot of great artists and like Yassine Bey, somebody who's like a natural talent, or like a Dave Chappelle, who's a good friend of mine and gives me a lot of work, who's somebody who said when he saw you at the White House Correspondents Dinner that you were just brilliant and fantastic and didn't pull no punches. And he was very impressed with that. But I look at people like that who have this natural talent that I feel like I don't have, but I feel like I'm way more ambitious than a lot of people. So I feel like even though I may not have that natural talent, I want it more than you.
Yeah. Like I'm never going to be as comfortable as Dave is on stage, but I'm going to write so many jokes.
Right.
And that's how I always was with track too. Like I'm never the most like physically, like naturally talented, but like my form was always better. And I was a jumper. So it was like, yeah, I couldn't jump. I was never going to jump as high as some of those girls, but like my form was perfect.
I really relate to that because I feel like that's how I am as a musician.
Yeah.
Dave is a legend at the Comedy Cellar. And for comedians, the Comedy Cellar has become like a holy grail in a lot of people's minds. And it's become mystified and storied. And your name comes up a lot. I was watching the new season of Crashing, and your name came up as someone who is at the Comedy Cellar a lot. And I've seen you there. And do you have any great stories from the Comedy Cellar that you could share with us?
Oh man, I have a lot. I mean, anytime I get there, I mean, Keith Robinson is almost always there.
Shout out to
Oh,
Keith
I
Robinson.
love him.
Anytime you walk in, Keith's at the table. He's always ready with like something to just take you down a peg, and then you hit him back real quick, and it's real fun. But there is nights when I was there the night. This is a couple years ago. It was Dave, Chris Rock, Aziz, Amy Schumer, and Jerry Seinfeld all showed up on the same show.
Wow.
And, I've had nights where it's like Chris has gone before me and then Louie's gone after me. And it's just like to be sandwiched in between like legends is just it's unbelievable.
And you've now become one of those names that people refer to.
And that's nice.
Yeah. Quickly.
It stays that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like it's my home. It's my favorite place to perform. It's my favorite place to work on jokes. I'm there every night. I'm in New York. And it's just like, I still have to pinch myself I have to pinch myself a million times because there's so many things I can't believe I'm a part of. But like when I'm there and it's like, I'm so comfortable there and I love it there. My nephews were just visiting me and they're they're 4 and 7, and I brought them to the cellar before it opened.
Oh.
And before it opened, I didn't see the show.
Oh my God. Wow.
But they and then so I brought them on stage to show them like where I work, and that was really neat. Like it's a cool place to be. Like, and then you hear when you're there and you're sitting at the table, and like you hear people tell stories of like Patrice or Geraldo, and you know, like all the greats that have passed that I thought. I mean, you'd love to see them today and what they're doing. And
Do your nephews try and give you joke ideas?
they don't really understand what jokes are yet.
That's such a comedian's answer.
But the thing is,
They're too young.
No, they don't get it.
they know though. They don't get it. But my 5-year-old nephew, he knows that I go to show. I told you I lived in Atlanta for the summer. And he was like coming up with the wackish jokes. He was like, TT, you should say this on stage. I'm like, no. But it was just so cute that he was trying to give different things.
Right, a little truth from the mouth of babes.
Yeah.
Your big break came with Seth Meyers, and you started out going to SNL. How did they do this? To working with Seth Meyers. And you've also worked on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Those are, in terms of mainstream, progressive shows, liberal shows that lean left. I'm a huge fan of that style of comedy news show. I'm a fan of The Daily Show, Samantha Bee, John Oliver, all of that stuff, right? Trevor Noah, all that stuff. In those writers' rooms, are there any conservatives in those writers' rooms?
There's not conservatives so much as like, I would probably actually be like the most, I'm not right-leaning at all, but like I think to be a good comedian, you have to live in the gray in general. You just have to find what the funniest thing is. And there's a couple people like that.
It's like a devil's advocate thing?
Yeah, a little bit where it's just like, well, what's the funniest angle on this? I mean, I think all of those shows could benefit from more than that, from more of that, because I don't necessarily think being correct is always the funniest.
Right.
And you got to decide what your voice is. Like, if you want to be correct, sure. But if you want to be the funniest, sometimes you're going to say stuff that is very politically incorrect.
Now, what I'm hearing you say, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit because I agree with you, right? But what I'm hearing you say is that people who, like yourself and me and Jasmin and most of the people in this room, we're considered left-leaning. We're considered progressive. And I feel like that's closer to the truth. I've heard you take down liberals and you consider yourself a feminist, but I've heard you take down feminists. So you're out there like, I'm going to be fair, right? But you must be a progressive or a liberal or a feminist because you feel like that's the right path, right? So you feel like that's right, that you use the word correct.
Yeah.
I feel like the truth can seem like it has a leftist bias.
Yeah.
But I'm considered a leftist. So I'm making a biased statement even when I say that. It's popular for I'm on social media a lot, and the alt-right and the right wing, they say the left can't meme.
Yeah.
Right? Well, meme to me is the lowest, worst form of comedy there is.
Right.
Like you just post a picture and like what the fuck is that, right? So
some of them are funny.
No, some of them are good. If you're good at it, it's funny.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But in the scope of what comedy is, to me, that's like, so
it's very low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, so if that's what you're best at, well, you can have that.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, do you feel like, what is it about comedians? Like, I grew up on Saturday Night Live. I grew up laughing my ass off at Dennis Miller doing, Weekend Update. But then when now Dennis Miller, I'm like, I don't find that funny at all. Anything he says.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the fact that people say that conservatives just have no sense of humor?
Well, I mean, I think anyone who like can't see outside of their political realm has a hard time finding any sense of humor. Like you see that with like any of the right-leaning comics. There's not that many, but there's a couple. They say the left is too liberal, but they're the same. Both sides of the spectrum are the same in the sense that not of their beliefs, but they have the same criticism of one another. And I don't necessarily think either one is wrong. I think the people that they get confused with comedy is that we're not supposed to talk about how we want. Like, I think a lot of liberals talk about what we want the world to be, and like ideally these are the changes that will happen. And I think comics at their best are commenting on how society is today. And so sometimes it makes you seem like you're saying something politically incorrect, but you're like, well, we live in a politically incorrect world.
This is what's happening.
So I'm commenting on what's happening. I'm not. I'm being honest. I'm not being ideal. And I think that's where kind of things get a little blurred right now, where it's like, yeah, of course, I'd love for things to be better in the world, but I have to comment on the world as it is today.
I just think that the left just we see more truth, because a lot of people are saying, oh, we don't see racism, we don't see this. And it's like, how do you not see that? So you can't possibly be really speaking about the truth if you're not analyzing everything that's going on, or if you're making excuses for every racist thing that happens in the world.
Well, that's what I feel like the liberal white community does a lot, where they're like, no, but we don't want to talk about like how we're racist. We want to talk about how we don't want to be racist. And I'm like, yeah, but let's talk about how we're racist,
so you can change
so
it.
that we can recognize that we're racist and then change it.
Right.
Like it's that like weird distinction where it's like, no, you have to comment on how things are and recognize how they are before you can make them better. Because we've done that a lot in America. You guys have probably noticed as black people that we tend to just not take responsibility and pretend like things are okay. But like I think that's where like you see it a lot in like Brooklyn audiences. Like there's all these like, it's like entitled white people who are like, they're like, you can't. We're not supposed to say that stuff about black people, and it's like
they don't really represent Brooklyn, by the way. That's
no. They don't.
That's not the real Brooklyn. I got to represent real quick.
And that's like, and they're saying like, well, you can't say that.
I know
stuff.
exactly
and I'm like,
what you talk about. I run into them though. I tell them the same thing.
But then those are the same people who I'm like, but you moved into a house that was stolen from a black family.
Right.
So let's not. I can say whatever I want. You're living in someone's home. Like they pretend to be woke, and I'm like, no, you're part of the problem. And a lot of those people, they end up later in their life becoming conservatives.
Yeah, it's like a lot of my fans who are like hip hop fans because they're trying to rebel against their parents, and like I like Kweli and Mos Def, and then they have to grow up white and get a real job.
Yeah,
and then it's like. I used to listen to that pro-black rap. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I have to actually live as a white person for real.
And if you don't call them out, they won't know it either. Because I know one of my friends made a comment and said, oh, I'm blacker than you. And I'm like, you can't be blacker than me because you're not
black. That was a friend?
Now, this was that was actually an adult test that I had to go through, because I had to, instead of cursing her out, I had to actually use it as a teaching moment, because I realized she really does not understand why she shouldn't be saying this. And if we're not calling out why things shouldn't be saying, or why XYZ you did was racist, then they're not going to know, and they're not going to be able to fix it, or they're going to use that as an excuse to not fix it.
Oh, and this is like, that's like the patience that black people have that like helps like move society forward. So thank you for having it. But like it's a
yes, we are the moral conscience of the country. You are welcome.
But white women don't have that patience. Like they immediately, if something like that would happen to a version of that would happen to a white woman, in most cases they're like, they just get angry instead of like explaining why what happened was wrong. They're like, they want it to be fixed now rather than being like, no, this is a process and we have to, like, they want it to be fixed before they start rather than knowing that you have to get in and fix it from the inside.
It's interesting that you bring that up because as a feminist that you identify as, there's in the black community, in the conscious black community, there is a ton of criticism about feminism, about feminism being something that only appeals to or benefits white women.
Right.
And the fact that when you talk about affirmative action, white women in America are the biggest demographic that receives affirmative action. There's something called woman-ism. Are you familiar with it? Woman-ism is black women who agree with sort of, and I could be getting this wrong, so if people are watching this, you could correct me in the comments when I say
Oh, they will.
They would never do that.
Add the tweets.
Right, but womenism is black women saying that our fight for equality as women is different from white women because we have to face oppression in two ways as opposed to
as
just
being
one.
black and then as a woman.
Right, because there's not a lot of space for black women in the feminism movement, so they've created their own movement, and there's leaders in that. What do you think of that?
Well, so I hosted this Variety Power of Women luncheon or something like that, which you could imagine was a lot of rich white women. And I said in in part of what I was saying, I did a bit about how I said how every, like, white women, you have to understand for every hurdle you have to go over, black women have to go over too, because they're fighting racism and sexism every day. And it's a thing that white women, they just don't understand.
It's like when, I think it's Bette Midler tweeted the,
yeah. She was there.
Yeah. Okay. Women is the nigger of the world, the John Lennon song. It's fun. I want to go back to your story, but it's interesting to me that the response to that, she first tried to defend it, and then she was like, you know what? I'm taking in this information, and you're right, I didn't know. And back in the days when that song was out, no one had a problem with it. And it's like, hold up, we had a problem with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. It's like it's all these like white women who they think they're making all these like big moves, and I'm like, you're ignoring so much of society. Like
It doesn't involve them.
Yeah, like the idea that like I would say white women might be the biggest problem in the country.
She said it, folks. I had nothing to do with her
I'm
statements.
just agreeing.
Getting claps and thumbs ups in the back.
It's the truth, though. It really is.
But like we and I have a bit about this in my stand-up, but it's like we want to take on this victim role, and I'm like, we've been a part of this the entire time. Like the idea that we haven't benefited from all this, the idea that like, you know. And the fact that I learned about this stuff from movies is crazy because we're just not taught about it. Like, you have to seek it out if you really want to educate yourself.
We should get your movie list later, too.
Yeah, but like by the movies, I mean, like, if you watch The Help or what's that Black Lady astronaut movie?
Oh, The Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures.
I like that. That's what you say on your...
Black Lady astronaut movie.
They're like, no, we can't call it that. People won't go see it. But like... You like even just those movies you see, and I know using those as references means I need to educate myself more. Yeah. But like you see all these like black women who worked really hard against everything with like having very little help. And then you see these white women who are like in these amazing homes with rich husbands, and they can't seem to do a thing for themselves.
Exactly.
And they act like they're just like, well, things have been so hard for us. And it's like, have they? Or were you just lazy?
Right.
You know, like, were you just complacent? Were you comfortable? And I say that, it's like that's what, I don't want to do the bit, but that's like, that's where I think white men were really smart. They kept us comfortable.
And the thing is that, like, black women, we take up for everybody. We take up for black men. We take up for white women. I don't know so much white men, but
they good.
They're good.
They good.
But
They
it's
straight.
like when you look at the feminist movement and women's marches, you see black women out there, loud and proud, you know, fighting a fight that's not necessarily ours. But when it comes to different people getting killed by police officers or different Black Lives Matters movements, you don't see people speaking up. And I have people on my Facebook that are white and black. And it's a distinct difference when there is a woman's rights matters where everyone's speaking up, and when there's a black matter and there's no white women speaking up at all. And it's just not like, come on, help us out so we can help you.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're not fighting against racism, you're not a feminist.
Word up. That's real talk. It's a jewel and a gem. Speaking of left and right and all that, college campuses are essentially incubators for, at this point, a lot of college campuses for like far left ideals. And there's a lot of comedians, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, some of the best, who've pushed back against some of the PC policing that's happened on college campuses. What do you feel about that?
I do colleges. I don't change my set at all. I think a lot of it is there's like this Twitter world and then there's like the real world. And I do think a lot of times in college campuses, like you do get people that are a little bit more sensitive and like it's just because they haven't experienced the world yet.
Right.
And yeah, if they hate what you say on stage, they hate what you say. But like, if they're being honest with themselves, they'll probably confront that in the next couple years anyway.
It's a good way to look at it.
I don't mind doing them. It's a great paycheck. And, you know, if it doesn't get the laughs, it doesn't get the laughs. But, you know, like I'm not.
So you're like, I'm doing my job. It's
Yeah.
like I'm me regardless of what the environment is.
Yeah. Like someone said this about my set not too long ago, and I took it as a huge compliment, where they were like, there's some artists who give the people what they want, and then there's some artists that are like, this is who I am, you can get on board if you want. And he was like, you fall in that line. And I was like, oh, thank you.
That's what the White House Correspondents Dinner was about.
Yeah.
Me as an artist, that's really where I got familiar with you as an artist, and I feel like a lot of people did. It was such a release for me. When Trump was in office, there was a week when he first got in office, right? I'm already wishing he was gone, right? When he first got in office.
I'm just kidding. I don't want
No, we're not even speaking that
Comedian, it's
negativity.
funny, it's jokes. She
White women got us into this mess. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, we'll keep us.
I'm sorry.
We'll keep us in.
She just joined the 52%. I was so incensed at this press conference he did, where this Hasidic Jewish reporter got up to ask him to try to give him a layup on the anti-Semitism. He's like, you sit down. And then April Ryan or someone stood up. He was like, you shut up. And I was just like, how is this happening? And us as a country were just sitting here and taking it.
Yeah.
And so I went out and I organized protests. I was out in D.C. For a week in the park outside near the White House, telling everybody. I was on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I'm like, meet me here at the park. We're going to protest. We're going to show up every day until he leaves. And every day about 20, 30 people showed up. And I was there for a week and it started getting cold. But I did. This is how mad I was. I stopped everything.
Yeah.
I looked at my shows and I'm like, I could take some time off. I was like, I'm just going to be in D.C. until he's gone.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. And so after I got over that and went home, I watched you at the Correspondents Dinner. And I'm like, that's exactly what I needed. I needed someone. He wasn't there in the room, right?
No.
But he was so upset that he tweeted the next day. And did they just really, 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 really not know who you were? Or they knew who you were and they thought they could contain you?
I think they thought, since I'm, I don't know how much they watched of my HBO special. I also don't think my HBO special is that offensive at all.
Right. And I don't know if it's really about Trump or politics.
No, there's no really. There's a Hillary bit in it.
Yeah,
but it's
and
not,
you're like, Hillary is like
I call
a bitch.
her a bitch. Yeah.
So they're like, her. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Hillary's a bitch lady. Get her.
Let's get her.
And I think they also thought that since I'm a woman, they would be like, well, she knows, she'll be polite. When I was doing a sound check, the woman who was in charge of it, she was like, so what's your gown look like? And I was like, oh, I'm wearing a suit. And she goes, I'm wearing pants too. That's like my little stick it to the man. And I was like, oh no, you have no idea what's coming.
Right. So you didn't do your jokes at soundtrack at all?
No, I didn't run anything by them. If they had asked for a script, I would have given them a completely fake transcript.
Wow, that's badass.
Well, I'd run the set for like an entire month before it happened, and somehow it didn't get leaked anywhere. But also, no one knew who I was, which was helpful. But I had all these people that I had sent it to people that have done it before, who had worked on other correspondence dinners, and they were like, that's not going to do well in the room. That's not going to do well in the room. You might want to throw in some of these, like, go after this person or this person because they'll be there and the whole room will get on board. And I was like, I'm not doing it for the room.
Right. I'm not like playing a role here.
No, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the people at home. It's the grossest room I've ever been in. Like, you saw people, Jeff Zucker from CNN, who they always play this game where they hate Kellyanne. They see each other from across the room, and Kellyanne! She comes running over, big bear hug, and I was just like, this is disgusting. And that's just how that whole
because they're making money anytime they put her on CNN.
Oh, yeah.
They're
it's like what
making
Les
so
Moonves
much
got
money.
caught saying. He's like, Trump is terrible for the country. He's great for CBS.
Great for CBS. He's great for MSNBC. He's great
all
for
of them.
Fox. He's great for CNN. He's great for a lot of the late night
TMZ
shows.
everywhere.
Right.
Like, yeah, he's
And you would know. You were in the writer's room for them.
yeah. And I do think you need to cover the news and you need to cover what happened, but I don't think I think there's a better way to do it than we're doing it right now.
Now, after you did what you did on that stage, they stopped letting comedians come.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Very happy. Yeah, I mean, it's very funny to me that they got a historian this time, and that's great.
Right.
He's fine.
Right.
I have
And you'll
nothing
always
against
be that
guy.
person.
But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy that it's broken. It should never have existed in the first place.
That's the point, right? To break that system, right?
Yeah. It's
Now-
all access journalism, and it's gross,
Right.
and it's,
Speaking of access journalism, can we talk about Sarah Sanders Huckabee's smoky eye?
okay.
Now, you got a lot of flack and pushback for a joke about her smoky eye, about how she makes it and what she uses to make it. I think that the right wing and the conservatives, they needed something on you. So they invented this narrative that you went after her weight or you went after her looks. Was there any real threat there at some point? Because I know that they can be very nasty.
Well, first of all, I don't think the right came up with that. I think the media came up with that narrative to take away from what I said at the end, which was that you're all profiting off of him.
Right.
So I think they picked that because they were like, we'll make it about her looks. And
Right. So you became an enemy of the people who were profiting off of,
Clickbait.
regardless
Exactly.
of political affiliation.
Yeah.
The
And
people,
then
okay.
it's very easy for the right to leap onto that.
Right.
Like that was, they're like, oh, you can't make fun of her looks. And for all these, all the people on the right who are like, the left can't take a joke and all this stuff. I'm like, I made a joke about eye makeup and you guys got mad about that. So let's just keep that
Right.
hypocrisy.
But you did say to Trump when he said that you bombed badly that you'd bet that he'd be on your side if you killed a journalist, which is a
Yeah.
great joke. I love it.
That was when
Because that's a little deeper than the smoky eye thing.
well, that was like right after that Saudi journalist got
Right,
killed,
right.
and he wasn't, and he took the side of Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like that tweet.
Donald Trump.
It's a good tweet.
Donald Trump almost he pisses me off the fact that we have to disrespect him so much because it's like, I'm an American, so, it does kind of suck that people just are talking to the president any type of way, but he deserves to be talked to this way. And it's just like, why don't you act right so we can respect you? Like, it's just freaking annoying.
Well, I think there's like misplaced rage, and Trump is bad. I'm not saying he's not, but I think there's misplaced rage where I'm like, he's just he's like the head of the pimple,
Right.
there is so
He's a
much
symptom.
there's like, Mitch McConnell, I think is the worst person, and he's been in government for decades.
Right.
There's
Right.
he has been controlling the country pretty much, and we're not focusing on him at all because we have Trump and he's saying all this stuff and he's tweeting all this stuff. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell's in like the cogs of the clock, just being like, no, we'll do it this way and this
little
way.
puppet
We'll take
master.
from here, we'll take from there, and he's been running the whole thing the whole time. And I think the left is broken too. I don't know. I think there's a million things you could say that's wrong with the government, but Trump is not the worst part. He's just the most vocal. And there's something nice about it when it's like anytime they threaten to take down the Confederate statues and then like all these people from the town come out and they're like, no, you have to keep them up. It's our history. It's like, I like when that happens because then you're like, all right, they were the racist people.
Right, I agree.
It brings them to the surface so you can point them out.
That's exactly what I tell people when they tell me to ignore these people on Twitter.
I mean, your Twitter people are out of control. Sometimes I can't even go on my
But you
Twitter
know why?
now.
It's because I engage with them.
Yeah.
And so because I engage with them, they end up exposing themselves.
Right.
And then they get their account suspended because they can't help but being vile bigots. But what you said is very important because we get caught up in this Democrat versus Republican. And for my money, it's not about Democrat versus Republican. It's about conservative ideals versus progressive ideals. And when you look at the scope of history, conservative ideals, which is essentially like, this is ours and we're going to conserve, and those guys look strange over there. We don't know those guys. We don't trust those guys. We have to conserve as self-preservation first, America first, patriotism. Samuel Johnson said patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. So that's like conservatives, right? Versus progressives, progressives are like, the status quo is bad. There are marginalized people. Let's be progressive. Let's be liberal. Let's be more free and open-minded, right? So you have conservatives who came up with the right wing is conservative. That's where the Nazis come from. That's where the KKK comes from. And people get confused because when the KKK was invented, that's the word I'm looking for. When they were invented, the conservatives were the Democrats.
Right.
So now you have people online and in the political discussion say, well, the Democrats, and I'm talking about in the black community as well, where they say the Democrats are the party of the KKK. Yeah, when they were conservatives.
Right.
They're not equally as bad.
Right.
Now, Democrats can be equally as racist as Republicans.
Right.
On
They're
some
just
issues.
more hidden.
You know,
for
on
sure.
some issues, climate change or whatever, or smoking pot, you know, Rand Paul might switch on smoking pot. You know, he might be a libertarian or whatever. But I think people really get caught up in the sort of red versus blue gang mentality of this country.
One of the big things about being a Republican is small government. And I'm a big fan of small government.
Right.
Like, if you look at all the states, it's like, yeah, they should be able to, like, there's so many things within each state that they should be able to control, whether it's agriculture or, you know, like how taxes are used, whatever it is. Like, if you, as someone who travels to a lot of those states, it's very clear that, like, they need to be able to have their own ability to govern themselves, because it's, you know, what's useful in Pennsylvania is very different than what's useful in Washington.
Absolutely.
State. I'm a big fan of small government, but I'm also a big fan of protecting the environment and anyone being able to get married, and you know. But then you see, like, I don't think people know if they're actually Democrats or Republicans. I think they just have latched on to a side.
You just grow up knowing that, oh, I'm Democrat or I'm Republican.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you see people that are Democrats that you're like, I don't think you're actually progressive. Like,
Right.
You just...
A lot of Democrats are not progressive at all.
It's certain things that I agree with Republicans too, but overall it is like rumored or whatever that Republicans are all racist or Republicans are all want this way, whatever. And it's just like, if we can lean away from the more of the parties about, oh, this person's winning and this person's winning, then we can really start to get some change, because at the end of the day, it's the same rich white people running everything. Doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or Republican, and those are the people that we need to take down in order to make changes. And the corporations and things of that nature, that's what needs to be taken down in order to make changes. And there's people that are running corporations that are Democratic and Republican.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's like, the whole thing is corporations. If we could get rid of what corporations are doing, like, I mean, like, then we could actually start caring about people. The problem is, it's like the government's not run to care about people. And that's when people were like, well, I want a businessman. I want someone who's a businessman to be able to run this. It's like, well, you don't want to run a country like a business, because a business cares about a bottom line.
And that's it, not
a
people.
Country should care about the people and should be okay with going in the red because it's helping the people.
That's an excellent point. It's an excellent point.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. You went from working on sort of other people's shows to working on your own show, The Break. What was that experience like?
It was really fun. I mean, like, Netflix only gave us 10 episodes, so we knew that was never going to be enough. A lot of people think we got canceled after 10. It was like, we only got 10.
Right.
There wasn't like, they didn't like stop the season midway
Right.
or something. But we always knew it wasn't going to be enough. I was with Seth when we started Late Night with Seth Meyers, and it took us almost 2 years to figure that show out. And that was doing the show 4 days a week.
Right.
So,
And this is a guy that has been doing this forever.
for like
head
he's been
writer,
a head
yeah.
writer of you know, a major television show
Right.
for a very long time. So we just tried to have fun. We just tried to do, you know, like, we tried out to do different things. I tried to have an environment where people felt like they could just write whatever they wanted to write. Every joke would be, because I'm a writer who I have to throw out 10 bad jokes to get my one good joke. So I wanted to make sure that it was an environment where people felt comfortable doing that. And we had a lot of fun. I mean, I'm happy with everything we did. I learned a lot from it. If I were to have another show, of course, there's things I would do differently.
Right.
I have a better idea of the kind of show I'd want to do now, but I'm very happy that I got to do it. And you know, Netflix isn't a great place to do a show like that, but I'm happy that they let me do it, and it was a good experience.
Now,
My friend worked on your show.
Who?
I hope you know her now that I called her out. Chrissy Gabriel. I don't know what she went by professionally, but her name is Crystal
Where
Gabriel.
did she?
She was an assistant producer, I think.
Oh yeah.
You know
yeah,
her?
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Everyone there was so great. Like we had a really fun time. But you know, we just need more runway.
I was going to say that sometimes it takes you having a show and, you know, like you said, to figure out what you want. So now when you have your next one, you're already going to be able to check off like, okay, this worked, and this doesn't work or whatever. So you'll be able to flourish even more.
Yeah. And like I let myself be influenced a little too much by the Correspondents Dinner, where it was like, we were already prepping for the show. Then the Correspondents Dinner happened, and people were like, well, now go in this direction. And I was like, yeah, maybe we should go in that direction a little. And I was like, no, I should have stayed on course. I should have stuck to my guns a little bit and kind of just made it the show that I really wanted it to be. I think people expected me to do more political stuff. Right. I'm not a really political comedian. I've just worked on political things.
Yeah, that's what I like about your set, is that you labor to be fair, and not at the expense of the comedy, of course. Like it's got to be funny first. Yeah. But you're not out here trying to be like, really biased to one-sided.
Yeah, I'm trying to let people see my opinion, my point of view, and I argue. I use every joke. I argue it almost like a legal case where I'm like, I try to cut people off before they can get mad. Like I know if I'm like, this is what people are going to get mad about. I'm going to negate all of those things so they have no ammunition. I mean, they can always find a way. Bloggers find a way.
Oh my God. That's their job, isn't it?
Sorry.
Now, speaking of Netflix, Amy Schumer and Monique, as comedians who happen to be women, spoke out about feeling like Netflix was unfair to them as women. Did you have any of those same issues?
I didn't, but I mean, I've only been doing stand-up for 9 years, so everything I get.
You're a 9-year-old.
Yeah, like everything I get is.
I know. I'm almost 5.
We had Godfrey on, and he was just like, "You're a 5-year-old."
You're a 5-year-old. Well, not even yet, but
Godfrey can do like 3 separate hours in any one night. Like
Godfrey did like 7 podcasts the day he did my podcast.
Wow. Yeah, he's got like a safe full of material.
Yeah, it's
insane. Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, so anything, I get asked a lot. It's like, is it harder for women? Are you treated unfairly? It's like, I've moved so quickly that I just can't relate to what they're going through.
Yeah, Monique has put a lot of time on the road.
She's put a lot of time in.
And then movies and TV
and she's had to do the dirty work too. Yeah. Like she's had to put her head down and probably do stuff that she didn't like. Like she's really had to put the work in. And I think, she feels like, and probably rightfully so, that she deserves more. That's the problem when you just use an equation to figure out what you should pay people. Yeah. I think Amy was already making a lot of money, so I don't really can't comment on how much more she should have been making. Like it's a weird thing with pay equality where it's like it does have to do with profit and numbers and like how much people bring in and all that stuff. It's like,
and then there's cultural currency.
Yeah.
Me as an artist, my numbers in the music industry are not the same as some other of my peers and contemporaries, but my cultural currency may be higher than some of them, depending on where I stand. I have Get By is my song. That's my free bird. Yeah. Right. That's where I got it. What's your free bird? Or do you have one? Is there a bit or comedy? Do people expect you to roast Trump whenever you show up?
They expect me to roast Trump all the time. I don't have a single Trump joke. Okay. I remember I was in Burlington, Vermont, which is a very liberal town, but
so they came for it.
Hilariously liberal in a way where you're just like so liberal that it's probably conservative again. And also this is, if anyone's from Burlington's listening, you're probably gonna hate me after this. But everyone there, I saw all these men that I was like, I thought they were just hanging out with their sons, and then I realized that their son was a woman and also their wife.
That's fucking hilarious.
We love you, Burlington.
Great town.
Great coat factories up there in Burlington.
But like Burlington. But I was every show, I swear, if I had stopped the show and said, listen, you know what? Enough with comedy. Tomorrow we have to go and march. They would have been like, yeah. Like that's what they came for.
With that
But
voice.
I'm there trying to do like, the end of my set's like 12 minutes of dick jokes,
Yeah.
like it's not necessarily highbrow
Right.
or political.
Right.
But
You have fart jokes, dick jokes, all that.
I love a fart joke. I
know.
love a poop joke. I mean,
Yeah,
come
man.
on, bring it on.
Get nasty with it.
Yeah, you have one of my favorite fart jokes of all time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The rape whistle fart joke.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
Why do you feel like you were, because you said that you were fast tracked, so you didn't really have to go through a lot of things. In 9 years, like, that is really good, because obviously they always tell you need to wait 10 years or more before you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that it was like your competitive nature, or why do you feel like you were able to fast track through a bunch of different obstacles that other comedians, and especially women, have to go through?
I think a lot of it was timing. I mean, I it's hard for me to say that like I worked harder than anyone else because I don't know how hard other people work. So I just know how hard I worked, which was very, very hard. I used to sit at my computer every day, and I would, I still had a day job at this point, and I would just tweet jokes all the time. I'd read the news, I'd tweet jokes. I mean, I was tweeting like 25 or so, jokes at a time, just they were terrible, but I was just practicing. And it was when Twitter was not as popular. You could get away with doing that kind of stuff.
09 Twitter.
Yeah.
That was the best Twitter, man. I love those times.
Yeah, like
The
I think it
Twitter
was
fingers were
2011,
crucial.
2012 for
Right.
me.
That was the era.
Yeah, that was
The golden era, son.
Yeah.
And it was really, I just really put my nose down. I worked, and I don't really. I'm trying to do a better job of it now, but back then and still a little bit now, I didn't really have a personal life. I worked all the time. I had a friend of mine early on in stand-up. He said, if you're not doing it every day, you're not doing it. And I just lived by that motto. I did as many mics as I could every night. I
Pay attention,
submitted
folks.
packets.
This is the blueprint.
Yeah, I submitted packets. I tried to do as much as I could. And then I ended up getting the opportunity to do a packet for Seth, and then got hired off of that. But even when I was at Seth, I still did stand-up every single night.
Right.
I still worked on my own stuff. And to his credit, too, he was really, really, really supportive of that. I remember
Shout out to Seth Meyers, who's one of my favorite comedy writers.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable boss. Like we were shooting a promo for the show before it even aired. And we were talking, we barely knew each other at this point. And he was like, so you're going to keep doing stand-up once the show starts? And I was like, oh, I'll probably cool down, just make sure I have enough time to focus. And he goes, no, I want you to keep doing stand-up.
Right. He's like, no, that wasn't a question.
Yeah. So that to me was like, he's always been so supportive. And so like,
That's awesome.
it was a great first real comedy job, because they just wanted you to do well, because they know if you were doing well, you'd do well at the show.
Now, for your new special, did you lock up their phones?
I didn't, actually.
Oh.
I didn't. I don't use Yonder and any of those things yet.
Okay.
I probably will at some point, but I do have people policing the room and
Right.
slapping phones out of people's hands.
She got phone slappers. I pay for phone
Shows.
slappers. But I asked that because you talked about sort of training ground of like trying jokes out on Twitter. And you called your jokes terrible. Kevin Hart had a pretty terrible Twitter joke.
Yeah.
Right? And I imagine a lot of comedians have terrible Twitter jokes from especially that era, like 09 to like when comedians were first discovering Twitter. I mean, Louis C.K. got in trouble for all types of other things. But I recall when he first got on Twitter, he got on and then quit twice.
Yeah.
Because he was doing jokes or trying things out that the Twitter audience was like, what the fuck is this? And he was like, okay, maybe Twitter is not,
The place
Right.
for him.
what do you think about cancel culture? What do you think about the idea that people like who are going through things like whether it's Aziz or Louis or Kevin Hart, and forgive me if people feel like those things don't conflate or are not all the same things.
Right.
But they're all people who are victims of things that they did either in their
the
private
past.
life or in their past or did on Twitter, that now people they're living their lives in public and they're making these huge mistakes in public. And people are judging them and assigning value and saying, well, okay, because of this mistake, right? Like Kevin Hart has built up this amount of credibility or this amount of cultural currency or whatever, but this mistake, we needed some of this back.
Right.
How do you feel about all that? And are there tweets that people might want to cancel you over?
Well, I think there's, like I think you have to be a lot smarter than we are being with cancel culture. First of all, you have to look at it like, all right, we're in 2019. Mm-hmm. What people were saying in 2009, you can't look at it in 2019 lens. Mm-hmm. You have to look at it in a 2009 lens because, the further you go back, I mean, you're always going to find people saying terrible things that as they progress.
Right. Myself included in my own personal history.
Mine too. Yeah.
I was having this conversation with Dave and he was saying how it's like, oh, you want to go in the past? Let's go in the past.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
What Kevin Hart tweeted is not nearly as bad as what happened in the past to Black people.
Right.
Or even in the recent past.
Right. Even yesterday.
Yeah, you don't have to go. You can go an hour ago.
Yeah.
You'll probably find something. But I think it's really weird for liberals to have this cancel culture because we're supposed to be living in the society of redemption. Like we want people to be able to prove that they've grown and learned. And I think that's like canceling is so bizarre to me because it's like, no, it shouldn't be about what people did. It should be about what they've done since then. Right. Have they grown? Who are they now? What have they done? What are they contributing to society? Mm-hmm. And also, what context did they do it in? Context is very, very important. On Twitter, as a comedian, if it was a joke, then it's very bizarre to throw in all this like you had just said it in a real world conversation.
Right, like just a stranger on the train.
Yeah, it's like they take Kevin's tweet like he said it to a boy in a playground.
Right.
Where it's like, no, he said it as
with a
tweet.
Dollhouse.
Yeah, like he brought a dollhouse to a playground.
In your mouth?
And then just like accosted like a little gay boy, And, like, that's not fair. That's not fair to do for comics. But, like, even if you take out of the, you take it out of joke society and where you're just like, okay, how people have behaved or whatever. I think we got to look to see, like, everyone has something they could be canceled over. Mm-hmm. Every single person. There's not, whether it's right now, 10 years ago, or something you did today that 5 years from now, people are going to be like, that was wrong. Right.
In the lens 5 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Things we don't even know are wrong right now that are definitely going to be wrong. I think it's so much more important instead of saying like they're wrong, we should never listen, we should remove everything they've ever done, to being like, no, look who they are now. Look at what we've done as a society. Because we want to do that with people all the time, like I don't know why this is the example that's coming to mind, but Michael Vick, people are probably going to get really mad at me for this, got in so much trouble for dogfighting, right? He went to jail, he served time, and now people are still mad at him. And I'm like,
right.
But that's supposed to be how...
But we're supposed to get over
how
slavery.
Jail works.
Right, that's how jail works. That's like, he served his time, he did his sentence. Like, he's supposed to come out of that, and we're supposed to accept him back into society. Right. And that, I mean, that's supposed to be how all... You should look at that for like all jail sentences.
But that's the problem too with the system, is that they make you do all this time and then they don't accept you back into society. They keep saying, remember when you did this? Remember when you did this? And it's like, no, I just want to do the right thing. Like, just let me, Right. And it's like if we're supposed to be living in a society of redemption, which I feel like liberals, especially white liberals, are like, no, we want to forgive. But then at the same time, they're like going after every single thing that someone's done. And I'm like, I think it's shitty. I think what we're doing is really shitty. I think it's, it's shitty to the people that were actually involved in the event to begin with, whether it's the person they're mad at or the victim, because we don't know how those victims feel. And a lot of this stuff that we're getting mad at, like we're getting mad. And I put this on, I'm sure there's more people that are doing it, but I put it on white women again, who we're saying we're like, no, you were offensive and you did something bad and we have to punish you for it. When we didn't even ask if they were offended.
Right. It's the idea that it's not about liberation. Right. It's not about wanting to be liberated or wanting to be progressive, which they claim. Yeah. But it's about wanting to imitate those who oppress you. It's like these, whatever you want to call them, 1% straight white males or whatever, they have had all this power to control. And a lot of people want to just imitate that power rather than really getting free.
Exactly. Like there's so much power in being able to say, you're canceled, you're gone. And it's like, wait, first of all, why? But also,
And who the fuck are you?
It's a
who
trend.
are you?
People just do it just to feel a part of something. Like they just jump on the bandwagon. They don't even know why they're canceling somebody. They probably don't even really believe in the cause a lot of times. Just like, oh, this is the cool thing to do. Let's all jump on this person. And then it's like, it's never okay to everybody jump and bully on one person. I always feel bad when somebody gets canceled, especially when they're obviously sorry for it. If you rape somebody, something like that, that's different. But if you said something and you're trying to, come back from it, then it's like, come on, let them learn and grow.
I just think like it's a power move. That's all it is. It's not about making society better. It's not about, they don't care. They just want, we've always loved this. We've always loved watching people die. Whether it's, metaphorically and canceling, but like Gladiator, public hangings, public burnings, public
The gallows.
lynching.
Yeah, like
Gallows humor comes from us watching people, their demise.
everyone, back when they used to behead people, that was someone's day.
Right.
They would leave their farm.
Pack a picnic.
They'd be like, we're not doing any farm work
Right.
today.
We're watching some
We're
beheading."
going to watch someone die. And it was like a big thing. Everyone loved it. We've always loved watching people die. And that's
Right.
what we're doing right now. Because it gives you a sense that you're like, in that one moment, no matter how terrible your life is, it's not as bad as that person.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
that is what it is.
That's why people watch Love and Hip Hop too.
what is wrong with it?
Exactly.
That's my stories. I watch it because it's my stories. It's like Young and the Restless.
I would like to thank you for standing on the side of restorative justice when it comes to the prison thing. A lot of people don't understand that. I would like to thank you for being you. I would like to thank you for being on the People's Party. Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Wolf.
Thanks for having me. Sorry about my voice.